The land devours its people. We saw giants. Afraid the Lord is with us.
Their protection is gone. We should go up and take the land.
We should have stayed in Egypt.
At least there we had food.
Look back, the leeks and onions.
They were only 11 days away. 11 days from freedom. 11 days from promise. 11 days from the land God Himself had sworn to give them. Yet instead of entering the promised land, Israel wandered the wilderness for 40 long years. Why? Was God angry? Was He punishing them? Or was something far deeper happening in the desert? Tonight, we uncover the real reason God made Israel wander for 40 years in the wilderness, and what this Bible story reveals about faith, fear, and God's perfect timing. Stay with this story, because the answer may change how you see your own waiting seasons. Before we go any further, like, comment, share this video, and subscribe. Stay till the end of this video and find out what happens next, because the wilderness was never about distance, it was about transformation. Find out why God made Israel wander 40 years in the wilderness. Israel had just witnessed the impossible. God had delivered them from slavery in Egypt through signs, wonders, and miracles. Seas had parted, enemies had drowned, chains had been broken. Under the leadership of Moses, the Israelites marched forward as a free nation for the first time. They were headed toward the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, God's covenant promise to their ancestors. Faith was high, hope was alive. Freedom tasted sweet. But freedom does not instantly create trust, and that is where the wilderness begins. Scripture reveals something surprising. God intentionally did not lead Israel by the shortest route. Why? Because the fastest road passed through enemy territory, and God knew something about His people. They were free from Egypt, but Egypt was not free from them. God understood that if Israel faced war too soon, fear would drive them back into bondage. Sometimes God delays the destination because the heart isn't ready. The wilderness was not an accident. The wilderness was not a mistake. It was not a detour. It was a classroom. Every step in the desert was designed to teach Israel who God was and who they were becoming. Yet the wilderness revealed something uncomfortable. Israel complained about water, about food, about leadership, about God Himself. Despite daily miracles, manna from heaven, water from rocks, fire by night, they doubted. Miracles don't always produce maturity. Fear at the edge of promise. When Israel finally reached the border of the promised land, God instructed Moses to send spies ahead. The land was good. The fruit was abundant. The promise was real. But the inhabitants looked strong. 10 spies returned with fear. 2 returned with faith. The people listened to fear. They believed giants were bigger than God. And in that moment, everything changed. The turning point. Israel refused to enter the land God promised. They cried. They rebelled. They wished to return to Egypt. And God responded not in rage, but in justice. That generation would not enter the land. They would wander until fear died out and faith could rise again. The wilderness became a waiting room for a new generation. Why 40 years? The number was not random. 40 years represented an entire generation. God was not just moving people through a desert, He was removing a mindset. Slavery thinking, fear-driven faith, distrust in God's promises. The wilderness lasted until a people who knew Egypt were replaced by a people who only knew God. In the wilderness, Israel had no farms, no stored resources, no backup plans. Every day required trust. Manna could not be stored. Water had to be provided daily. Direction came only from God's presence. God was teaching Israel dependence before inheritance. God was forming a nation. Israel did not enter the wilderness as a nation, they entered as former slaves. In the desert, God gave them laws, identity, worship, community, purpose. The wilderness shaped their values. Freedom without structure leads to chaos. Promise without preparation leads to failure. God did not abandon Israel in the wilderness. He walked with them, a cloud by day, fire by night. His presence never left. Even in discipline, God remained faithful. Even in delay, God remained close. The wilderness exposed hearts. Some rebelled, some trusted, some learned too late. But God never stopped teaching. The desert stripped away self-reliance and replaced it with faith. What feels like delay may actually be preparation. The next generation rises. After 40 years, the old generation passed. A new generation stood ready. They had seen God's faithfulness daily. They had learned obedience. They trusted God without comparison to Egypt. And finally, the journey ended. The Jordan River parted. The promised land opened. The wilderness and you. This Bible story is not just history. It is a mirror. Many people today live in wilderness seasons. Delayed dreams, unanswered prayers, long waiting periods. But the wilderness is not rejection. It is refinement. God uses the desert to prepare hearts for promise. God made Israel wander 40 years in the wilderness because they needed transformation, not speed. They needed faith, not fear. They needed God more than comfort. The wilderness was never about punishment. It was about preparation. What if the delay in your life is not denial? What if God is forming you for something greater? And what if the wilderness is proof that God hasn't given up but is still working? Israel entered the wilderness as freed slaves. They left as a people ready to inherit God's promise. The desert was long. The journey was hard. But God was faithful, and He still is. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments section. What did the wilderness teach Israel? And what might God be teaching you right now? Thank you for watching Aura of the Word Studios. Stay tuned for the next powerful Bible story.